Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Guitar Genius Chat. I'm Mike Philippov. Great to see all of you here tuning in from all over the world. So the topic of today's chat is going to be about improvising. And I have with me a very special guest, a good friend of mine and a great musician, great guitar teacher, master guitar instructor, Mr. James Maxwell, who is very passionate about the topic of improvising, as you will soon hear. Enthusiasm is just dripping off of him every time he talks about anything music related. So welcome, James. Great to have you here.
Hey, great to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So to kick things off, since we are talking about kind of a complicated topic, often a misunderstood topic, the topic of improvising, let's just start by defining it in as simple of a way as we can. So if somebody were to ask you, what is improvising, James? How would you describe that?
All right. You're right. It is a complicated topic. It is very deep. It's a good way to go about it first is to talk about what improvising is not. So improvising is not when you're sitting on the couch and you got a cup of coffee and you're watching some TV and you're noodling around on your guitar and you're playing whatever you feel like playing. And I mean, technically, yes, you're making up stuff. It is improvising, but there's no plan. There's no takeaway. You're not getting better at anything. It's basically just noodling. Now, noodling's cool. I'm down with it. I think it's great. Should do it a lot. But when you're talking about improvising, though, improvising is more of an intentional action. It's intentional creation of musical ideas. You're trying to intentionally create musical ideas that will produce a specific feeling. So if you're just up there playing with no plan or idea, picture Peter Frampton, for instance. Peter Frampton's up there playing Do You Feel Like We Do live. He's got 80,000 people in the audience. They're all cheering him on. And it comes up in his solo and he plays cool D minor pentatonic. Sure, he's making it up, but what did it do? It did nothing. It added nothing to the music. You see, as you're improvising, you're trying to create a feeling, but you're also completing something. You see, when you're improvising, you're not just noodling over a chord progression. You're making whatever you're improvising over better. So you have intentional creation, not just noodling. You have improving the quality of what you're playing over as well. So that was a long-winded answer, but it's better to answer it this way than say, oh, it's like you put on a backing track, you just make up stuff, because it's not that.
Yeah, great answer, James. In fact, it's kind of funny because when you were explaining this, I thought to myself back in high school when I first started playing guitar, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and I told him, he's like, what do you do on guitars? Like, what do you practice? I practice improvising. And he said, why do you improvise? It means you don't know what you're doing. For some reason, I always remembered that. I mean, we were both, 14 years old at the time, but your answer is perfect. It's spot on, because I think this misunderstanding of what improvising is or what it isn't is still very prevalent among guitar players. So thank you for clearing that up. That is really good. So when you teach improvising, because I know you've got a lot of students and you have a lot of experience teaching, all kinds of students with all kinds of challenges, what are some of the approaches that you might take, since this channel is all about practicing and most of the people watching this want to know, how do you practice this stuff? So what are some approaches that you use to teach someone improvising in a somewhat systematic way?
Sure. So improvising is a skill just like any other thing. And if I were to say, hey, Mike, how do I learn how to play fast? Well, you're going to say, that's kind of a long answer. And there's going to be all kinds of different categories and things that have to go into it. But it's definitely not start slow and then gradually speed up. It's horrible advice. Don't go with it. Now, with improvising, you have a lot of, you're with me on that, aren't you? That's right. So with improvising, though, it's the same thing. So let's talk about learning golf. Yes, I know he asked me about improvising, But I'm talking about teaching and learning, so I'm talking about golf. We're going to learn how to play golf. We got Tiger Woods. He's our golf instructor. He's great. He's awesome. And he's going to take us out on the course, and he's going to say, all right, so we're going to go to the first tee, hit, boom. And he goes, oh, you should have held your arm straight. Okay, then we go chip, boom. Hey, you should have done this. Oh, okay, got it. Then we go to the putting green. He's like, boom, 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 because it's the putting green. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe a couple more. And he's like, you should have held your arm straight and look at the ball. And then we do it again. And then we do it again. And we do it again. We would never, ever, ever get good at golf. And Tiger Woods would never, ever, ever, ever teach that way. What he would do is take us to the driving range and teach us how to drive a ball correctly. He would take us to the putting green and teach us how to putt correctly. And then when we have these items together, we put them together and we go golfing. So going golfing when you're bad at it, as I am, is fun. But it's more fun when you're good at it. So when we're talking about teaching it, we have to break it down into these categories like putting, driving, chipping, and all the things we do. The first main category is rhythmic training, because a lot of people do not train rhythms at all. They simply have scale patterns they play and never give rhythms a second thought. But rhythmic training, I mean, that's phrasing is based off of rhythms. Phrasing is the key to everything. All of these fit into phrasing. You talk about rhythms. A great way to learn how to play rhythms more effectively is to make a list of 10 rhythms. If you don't know how to write out rhythms, learn how to write out rhythms. But until you do, write out just little numbers like 3, 2, 4. Not higher than 6. And we're going to call those note groups. Because if you train yourself to play in small note groupings, what you're doing is you're training yourself to play in phrases. So if I just have a simple rhythm, as simple as like 3 notes, I'll go like, or something, whatever comes out. All right. So I have this rhythm. By itself, it's nothing. But once we start to apply it to all the other items, you're going to see how important the rhythmic treatment is. Even if you take a simple scale, like that was lame. This is less lame. And that's just... That's all that rhythmic phrasing was. So when you train yourself to be able to do these rhythms without even thinking about it, your phrasing will become much better and it'll sound like you know what you're doing. One more thing about rhythmic training too, is it actually allows you to condense time dramatically. So if you have like a 12-bar blues, for instance, 4 measures, 4 measures, 4 measures of whatever you're playing. If you play 12 riffs, it's going to sound awful. If you play one continuous run-on sentence, it's going to sound awful. If I play this over a 12-bar blues, I have no idea where I'm at. You have no idea where I'm at. It's just nonsense. But if we have phrases, oh, he's done. He finished the first set. You see, phrasing, it's all about phrasing all of the time. And phrasing is based upon rhythm. So that was the first thing, believe it or not, rhythmic training. And I gave that long of an answer. So guess what you're in store for now, Mike?
That's fantastic. I mean, so after you teach them rhythm, or I imagine you don't just teach things rhythm first only for like 6 months. You combine it with other elements as well. So what are some other elements you might bring into besides rhythm?
Oh, absolutely. There's 5 main elements, rhythm being one of them. The other one is single string playing, because I'm going to use my powers of psychic ability here. And I'm going to say, the watchers watching this now, they know how to play scales, but yet they still play the same riffs all the time. They know technically these scales work, but yet they always feel like they're playing the same thing over and over again. So I'm right. Yes, I caught you. Yes. Okay. There's reasons for this. And good news is it's not completely your fault. When you're playing out of general scale patterns, if you're playing a pentatonic scale, for instance, this shape, 8-5, 8-5, 7-5, 7-5, this note on this side of the guitar is the only note in this scale pattern that's going to get bent. This note is the only one that's going to get bent. That's going to get bent. That's going to get bent. So only the notes on this side of the scale pattern are going to get any treatment at all. These might get a little vibrato or a slide maybe, but all the good stuff's happening on this side. If you're going to do a pull off, it's this finger. If you're going to do a hammer on, it's that note. So in the case of an A minor pentatonic scale, because we're in A because it's guitar, and I think there's one other key, but I don't know what it is. I know A though. So when you're doing this, A and C is the note that's always going to get the treatment to it. So you need to expand that out. So you learn the notes on a single string, a single note path across the neck. It does not matter which note you're playing because you're going to be able to hammer on, pull off, slide to whatever it is you want. Remember, a big part of this, huge part of this is you being able to envision in your mind what you want to hear and then be able to produce it on the guitar. Now, I'm going to guess that if I play something that sounds like this, like you did not picture me going, no, because that would be silly and that's ridiculous. No one would do that. Or if you did, I'm sorry. I offended that one person. So you're trying to actually make it fit within there. Once you get rid of the pattern, you've now gotten rid of all of those cliche riffs that you do. Those riffs still exist in your playing. They're cool. We like them, but they don't fit over everything. And you want to be able to move between them. So you've eliminated all the reasons for the cliche riffs. You've now opened yourself up to move around the neck. So when you play between two positions and you move up here, it's not just back and forth jumping. You have a nice smooth transition. So you have rhythmic playing. You've got single string playing, which is fantastic. You should all do that. If you're not doing it, make that a big priority. And I'll also talk about ornaments as well. Even I'll condense a couple ornaments just for time's sake. But once you do this with your rhythm training and you're on a single string now, if you isolate your ornaments, you're going to say, all right, I'm going to work on slides for 7 minutes or whatever time. The average guitar player will not do this. They will play and they'll do a slide and they're like, oh, I'm cool. I did a slide. However, by forcing yourself, I like to call this forced creativity, by forcing yourself to stay within the boundaries of the rhythm you created, of the single string that you're on, and of the ornament that you chose for a long period of time, you're going to get bored in like 10 seconds, okay? This is good because we want you to get to that point where you get bored, because it's not until this point that you're going to make anything new anyway. You've been skating this whole time on these riffs because you played it, and now you're going to play something else, and then you're going to play something else, and then you're going to play something else. You've never taken the time to really hone and develop and massage and create a riff of your own that you can reuse, and reuse again. Not just the riff, but remember how you created it. That's the key here. I don't care about any individual lick or riff. You can make a favorite one, but this is all about being able to do it instantly in every situation. Whatever's in your head comes out on guitar. So you had rhythmic training, single string playing, isolating your ornaments, having the discipline to stay within those restrictions that you put to make it good. By the way, I'm sure, Mike, that you deal with this all the time, this next thing, which is the more advanced the guitar player, the harder it is to get them to do these steps.
Yes.
I could take some dude that started playing last week and I could have them improvising an awesome melody in minutes. Like, that's one of the things that I do really well. It's like, I get to meet them. We get going. I say, we're going to play, we're going to improvise a solo. I say melody, so it doesn't freak them out. We're going to improvise a melody. Okay. And boom, like that, we get them going just by using these elements. Then you got your advanced players and they say, wait, I know all these notes too. Well, great. If you can't make this sound good, this string sound good, adding these other 5 will not help you. This one's got to sound good. So if you are a more advanced guitar player, which I know a lot of you are as well, you've got to bring it back and understand, look, this is something I cannot do right now, but I want to be able to do very, very, very well at a high level. So I've got to start at the beginning. You remember, you don't care about your own feelings. You don't care about your own ego while you do these things. Because if you come across the very first step and you have trouble just making a rhythm, you don't get irritated because you've been playing for 30 years. You rejoice because you just said, oh my gosh, I've been playing for 30 years and this has been the problem. Hallelujah. Very good. So whatever it is, you are on the step that you are on. There's no getting around that. You're playing guitar at home. You're practicing at home. You're on the step that you're on no matter what. So rejoice when you find these errors because they're the things that are really, really holding you back. Yes, I'll quickly say what the last one was, just so I'll let Mr. Philippov speak one more time. I can ramble. What can I say?
This is fantastic stuff, James.
Well, thank you. I do talk about it quite a bit and teach it quite a bit as well. And it is my favorite thing to do.
It's obvious. It's obvious that you are, very, very passionate about this stuff. My favorite thing of what you said, 2 things stuck out to me, actually 3. When you were talking about how only half of the scale shape gets emphasized if you just run up and down the scale shape, that is a pretty profound thing. And most people, I imagine, never thought about this before. So I wanted to highlight this point, make sure that people watching this are paying attention to this. And the soloing on one string is going to really help solve that problem and get away from, if you're already more advanced and you can play fast, playing on one string is going to humble you really quick because you're not going to be able to play as fast. So you're going to be more forced more to think about the phrasing, the things with the rhythm and the ornaments you can apply to the notes, which is really, really critical. And the other thing that stuck out to me was the forced creativity thing. I thought about Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron, that movie, where he said your muscle doesn't really grow until you reach like the point near failure as far as bodybuilding goes. So like the first 10 reps don't even count. It's only like the reps 11 and 12 that where you're pushing past the pain, which is going to make you grow. Of course, kind of take that with a grain of salt. But as far as the application for guitar playing, when you run out of all the ideas, what else do you do? That's what's going to make you grow. That is a really fantastic point. So thank you for that, James.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you. That is a great analogy as well about bodybuilding. I originally started thinking about that too when I think it was someone asked Muhammad Ali or something, how many push-ups can you do? I don't start counting until I can't do them.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So when you teach somebody, James, and you walk them through some of these processes you laid out, what are some of the challenges that people run into, some of the most common ones or the biggest ones, and how do you deal with them?
So I'd say some of the biggest challenges that people have is initially they have a very, very difficult time knowing what they want to hear in the first place. You see, a lot of what they've done, this is a good example of how this happens, of an example of when this happens. If you and I are going to jam, and I say, all right, so I'm going to play this chord progression. It goes A, Now, if I say, all right, now we're going to play another chord progression, and it's in the key of G. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. If you start playing at the same time I do, I know that you've got no idea what you're about to play because I didn't play anything yet. So I could have gone, or I could have gone. I mean, you have no idea what I was going to do. So why would your stuff complement my stuff? It ain't going to happen, right? So the question was about the most challenging thing is, and things that people have a hard time with, is initially hearing in their head what it is that they want to have come out of their guitar. And then the second step is to actually make it come out of the guitar. And a very easy way to get started on this is to ignore the guitar completely. Put it down, ignore it, put on some sort of backing track. I have a loop set up here. Here's an A minor loop, because remember, it is guitar. I'm sorry I even mentioned that G. That shouldn't have been there. A minor. Okay, now, if you're listening, you should be able to picture in your mind some sort of melodic phrase that's going to be happening. Now, you're not going to picture the guitar neck. You're not going to picture a scale. You're not going to picture notes, da, 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 da. You're going to picture the way that the melody is going to actually flow in your head. You're going to picture it. Once you get an idea in your head, you're going to grab your guitar and you're going to begin to play and try and reproduce it. This is the fun part. If you're new at this, whatever you play is going to suck probably. And then you're going to go, oh, okay, I'll do that again. You see, when people start doing this, I'll get back to that in a moment, but this is a really, really, really important point. So I really need to nail this. Get close to your speakers and understand this completely. You have to give yourself permission to sound bad. If you do not give yourself permission to make mistakes while you do this, it's going to be almost impossible for you to progress effectively as an improviser. But what do we do as guitar players? We always want to sound good. I do. And if you're playing things and you're working on a rhythm or solo set or whatever, it's going to get monotonous. You don't care if it gets monotonous because you have a very specific goal, which is to improve that. It's like Tiger Woods and putting. You're putting for an hour. Putting might feel monotonous. Don't care. You're working on putting right now. Okay, so when we're talking about hearing something in your head and making it come out on the guitar, you've got to remember this question. If you hear something in your head and you finally got an idea and you go to produce it on your guitar and it doesn't come out perfectly, why should you be upset about that? What happened in your life that gave you the ability to, the very first time you tried something, just automatically be able to do it? I'm guessing nothing, because it never happens that way. But because guitar is an emotional instrument, when we play things that sound bad, it hits us. It makes us feel a little bit bad. We go, ugh. So from now on, you're going to think of, when you're training, this does not apply all the time, when you're training on improvising and you hit bad notes, you hit things that don't sound good, it's no different than you swinging at a baseball and just hit a foul ball. It's no different. There's no emotional attachment to hitting a foul ball, and there's no emotional attachment to playing a phrase, whoops, and that you just missed on. That's missing. You've missed. There's a difference between being clueless, having no plan, and just playing crap and having it sound bad, or having a plan, going for it, and then not and missing on it. Because the more you do that, you're going to learn to recover from those quite a bit as well. So that's a very good thing. That long answer was for the question about what's hard to teach and what's important to teach and all that. And it's being able to hear what it is first and then envision it and then reproduce it on the guitar. So all of that inside information, that's really, really important stuff for you to learn while you're improvising. So yes, that's my long answer.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, James. And one of the things that stuck out to me was giving yourself permission to sound bad. That is so important. And I say this to my students all the time as well about undoing bad habits with technique and things like this. It's crucial for everything. And like you said, whatever happened in your life that was a worthy accomplishment where you were graded the first time you did it. It never happens this way. And it's sort of like when you're speaking to somebody and you just make a mistake. Oh, I actually meant to say this, and then you just start over and you say it again. And it's just reframing what your attachment is to that thing, and that's going to make a huge difference. So that is a great point. And of course, the first thing about you start playing, and if somebody starts soloing immediately, you got a problem because you got to stop it and point out that you're just making meaning the student or the person improvising, making their job so much harder than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, great stuff there, James. So in my experience, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, when you teach somebody, one of the things that people struggle with is running out of ideas sort of mid-solo. Maybe they think about the things that you told them and they start soloing and they're doing things correctly, but then like 90 seconds in or 2 minutes in or 2.5 minutes in, they revert back to their old patterns and they start noodling, or they have a hard time coming up with what to play next. So when you have a student like that, how would you coach them through that?
Oh, sure. This is really easy too. You'll notice a lot of the answers that we're going over are actually easy answers by themselves. Then when we combine them all, you get really, really true greatness. But when you're running out of ideas mid-solo, which is extremely common, I mean, obviously it's one of the most common things that we come across. The first thing, the obvious thing, is that you didn't have a plan in the first place. Because if you did, you wouldn't have run out of ideas. So I give you a story to illustrate this idea well. If I say, all right, Mike, I know last week you were attacked by a bear. And why don't you tell the people the story about that? Oh, that's right. I'll be back. I got to get the phone. 2 minutes. I'll be right back. And I go, okay. And I come back and I hear Mike talking. He goes, oh, yeah, that's right. I did get attacked by a bear last week. Got in my car. It was the craziest thing, man. A bear just jumped me. All right. Now what are we going to do with the next minute and a half? Okay. The next minute and a half is him retelling the story he just told with crappy details that he's filling in. We already know the big story. He was attacked by a bear. So now we're getting all the little details put in, and there's no climax. There's no excitement. Now, I said, Mike, you got to tell me a story about being attacked by a bear. He says, yes. Guess what? How long did I have? 2 minutes. I won't make this 2 minutes, but I'll make my point. All right. So I woke up, grabbed some coffee. It was beautiful. I even jogged that morning. First time all year I did. And then I decided to go to work to get a little bit of work done. So I get on the interstate. I'm looking ahead of me. I see ahead of me, there's this dark mass on it. What the heck is that? I think I'm going to hit it. There's a dark shadow. I'm getting closer and closer. And all of a sudden I get sideswiped by a bear. This bear's in a car. He's driving. I didn't know a bear could drive outside of the circus. And then, okay, so that story had a buildup. It had some crazy twist. It had some sort of climax. He can go on from there. But I'm telling you, my second story was far more interesting than the first one. So when you're playing, you've got to have a plan about what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Usually you have an idea of how long your solo is going to be. Even if you're at an open blues jam, you're going to know it's going to be probably 2 or 3 times around. If it's not, you at least have a good idea and you can work with it from there. The second main reason is that you're relying on licks. You're a lick player. Don't be offended. Tons of people are. Most people are. If you're a lick player, that means that you're soloing and you ran out of licks that fit that solo. Just like the riff in Purple Haze doesn't fit Kid Charlemagne. Riffs fit certain types of songs for a reason. Now, if you're a riff creator and not a riff reproducer, then you're going to consistently be developing that skill real time as you're playing to build up that solo. You don't have to have every riff planned out. You have an idea planned out. Soon, I'm going to just get to a big climax and it's going to be huge and it's going to sound great. And then I'm going to taper off and then I'm going to go back to my chords. Now, you have been training in starting from zero to creating a good sounding phrase. You're just doing that in sequences. If you're a riff player, you played a riff, then you played another, then you played another, then you didn't know another riff that's going to fit this song. Now you're lost. Be a riff creator. Here's my bumper sticker. Be a riff creator, not a duplicator. Although learning other people's riffs and all, that's all great. Never take anything I say like that as any of that's a bad idea. We're talking about how to get better at improvising. If you want to get better at playing riffs, that's a great thing to do because you get good ideas. You just got to adapt them to your own playing.
Right. Good stuff, James. Awesome. So what about the topic of natural talent? So if somebody comes to you, somebody's been playing for a while and is like, I've tried to learn to play or maybe even tried to improvise and I don't know, I think I need to be born with this stuff. So what do you say to someone like that?
I'm sorry that I laughed immediately as soon as you said that. I really am.
I know what you meant. I know what was behind that laugh. So I'm
oh my gosh, natural talent. Do you know how I'm very natural on stage? If you've ever seen me play live, I'm insanely natural. I have spent so much time and work and studied and recorded myself and perfected and refined and done it again and again until I was a total natural. Everybody tells me, oh man, you're on stage, you look so natural. Oh, your phrasing is so natural. There is no natural talent. You know what there is I chose to be good at something and I made a plan and I stuck with it. There's your natural talent. The only time this does not apply where you say, okay, so you have two total beginner students, neither of them ever played anything. One dude played piano his whole life and is an excellent typist and is really good at video games. The other person is a bricklayer or something, just whatever they are. One person might naturally have some more agility in their fingers for a bit, but that's going to go away real quick. Like initially the first month, maybe the guy who did a lot of piano and stuff is going to make a little bit more progress because they have a little bit more agility in their fingers. But given a few months, guess what? It all evens out anyway. And then whoever is the most consistent with their playing, whoever has a plan is going to beat them every single time. So natural talent, it's ridiculous. Yes, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I think about that as well. I mean, it's all about just choosing, like you said, choosing to be great at something, admitting to yourself or accepting that everybody sucks in the beginning and give yourself permission to go through that sucky phase and not expect to be great in the beginning. And then if you just stick with it, everything comes together. It's just a series of skills, just like going back to improvising, which your very first answer was excellent. How you said that improvising, it's a combination of skills coming together. It's not one thing where you're just noodling, which is actually leads me to a kind of a controversial view that I hold about improvising. Because if you go to Google and you type in what is improvising or improvising defined, they say improvising is you are playing spontaneously or without preparation. But I think that's completely false, because if you really think this through, like you said, the reason you're natural on stage or the reason you're good at improvising is because of that preparation you've done leading up to that moment, all these thousands of hours of practicing that you've done. Doesn't mean you've practiced soloing over that backing track for 30 years, but you learning the scales, you practicing all the phrasing ornaments and the rhythmic ideas and being able to recall them and combine them and adapt them to whether it's a rock song or a bluesy song or a ballad or whatever. That is the preparation. And now it all sounds natural. But so I think that's a misunderstanding that people have about improvising. So do you agree with that, or do you have a different philosophy?
Oh, I completely agree with that. I looked it up before we started this live stream as well. I just wanted to see what it said in Google. And when I saw the word spontaneous and whatever the other thing was about, just no preparation. Oh my gosh, I was dying. Like the opposite. Your ability to improvise effectively is completely dependent on your depth of knowledge in how notes sound over a specific chord, your ability to create great rhythmic phrases, whatever physical skill you have. You don't have to have a lot. There's a lot of great players that I have as students that physically are not terribly great, but they improvise beautifully. So you have physical skill, you have the rhythmic thing, you've got ornaments, slides, and all that business. When you put it all together, however deep every one of those categories goes is going to increase your overall level of playing. This is a very good way to think about note choices. Now, you're a beginner improviser. Not you, Mike, obviously. I'm saying that if someone's a beginner improvising person, they will have a scale that they use. They're going to play the scale. Okay, none of those notes on that scale or anywhere on the neck have any sound at all. Like if I just play this note, that note doesn't have feeling. That note doesn't have feeling. That note doesn't have feeling. They're all just notes. They don't actually create tension or feeling until they're combined with other notes, like the backing track or the band. So if you have an A thing like that, because I know what things do, if I want to create a sound that sounds resolved, but it's my favorite interval of all time, the ninth. It's resolved, but not. A little bit of tension, and it sounds like this. That note is nothing on its own, but combined with an A note, it has a completely different texture. Especially if you come from a fourth, which has even more tension. Now it resolves more. As a matter of fact, a fun thing, once you train your ear, notes that used to sound good, like the third, minor third, actually sound a little bit weird. But this one, even cooler. So, if you do not know how notes react, then you're in trouble because your ability to be a great to be able to improvise effectively, to know what the notes do ahead of time, your ability goes skyrockets. So it's a great thing to work on, which is why you should definitely work with single chord or single note backing tracks. Because a note only sounds like that function over that chord. If I change to a D minor chord, B sounds completely different. And if I change to an E minor chord, now it sounds different again. So you have to learn what the note function is more than just the notes. So you train yourself in on this. And as Mike was saying before, now you're in a new situation. And now this is a ballad. And the next song is going to be a funky number. It doesn't change how those notes react. They're always going to react the same way. The root is always going to sound resolved. The flatted fifth will always have a certain sound, and the fifth will have a certain sound. So the more you get in tune with that, the more you can picture it in your head, and then you can do it. It's a fun exercise for you. If you don't think you have this ability yet, all you have to do is put on a backing track in A, and before you play a note, decide ahead of time a really bad note that you're about to play. You're like, put on the A. You're like, okay, which note, one of these notes will suck? Probably this one. Oh, I did it. If you are able to do that, you can also do the other. Because that one is one that you know sounds that way. It's not a whole lot of notes. so you can figure out the functions of them and then know what you're going to play before you play it. Notice how often that theme comes up. Know what you're going to play before you play it.
Yeah,
Everything centers around that there. Yes.
exactly. Kind of like when you're talking, you want to have something you want to express, and then you find a way to put it into words with the right vocal inflections and tonality and all that stuff. So great points, great analogies there, James. So, all right. So people who want to follow you, you have a Facebook page that people can contact you on. So this is the page where you guys can reach James with questions, and make sure to follow him and like all his posts and stuff, because he shares all kinds of wisdom, nuggets of wisdom about improvising daily. So it's good stuff there. And also I have a resource of my own that is unrelated to the topic of improvising, but it is related to the topic of unconventional practice ideas that work like crazy. So if you are interested in building your guitar speed, this is the resource I recommend. It's free. It's a video masterclass on how to build guitar speed without doing any slow practice. So you can check all that out for free at the link that's on the screen. All right, so let me go back to this. Cool. So James, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom on improvising. I hope everybody watches this over and over and applies the things that you've been talking about, because there's a lot to unpack and apply there. So awesome stuff there, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.